Well, New Hampshire voters will cast their ballots tomorrow in the state's first-in-the-nation primary. This comes as new polls show that Senator Bernie Sanders has the edge heading into this crucial contest. Ed O'Keefe is in Keene, New Hampshire. Ed, are the candidates changing their strategies at all? Because it looks really tight at the top.
It sure does, Anne-Marie. Good morning. Candidates are indeed changing it up a little bit, especially Senator Bernie Sanders and Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who are now attacking each other over policy and how they raise campaign cash. And then there's former Vice President Joe Biden, who's making a last-ditch attempt to save his campaign.
This is, I think, what winning feels like.
The current frontrunners, former Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Senator Bernie Sanders, blanketed the airwaves Sunday and spent most of the day attacking each other.
You know, Pete has raised campaign contributions from over 40 billionaires.
Buttigieg hit back by criticizing Sanders' health care plan.
The plan so expensive that Senator Sanders himself freely admits he has no idea how it's supposed to be paid for.
Our CBS News poll shows Buttigieg is now leading among moderate Democrats in New Hampshire. He's stealing support away from former Vice President Joe Biden, who was first among moderates last month. That explains this Biden ad mocking the 38-year-old mayor's small city experience.
When parkgoers called on Pete Buttigieg, he installed decorative lights under bridges.
Biden also called out Buttigieg's lack of support among black voters.
We're going to have to be able to win a lot of places that, in fact, have very diverse populations. And so the assertion that he's ready across the board, I don't see it.
The voters who know me best in the African-American community, those in South Bend, are backing me.
Another moderate, Senator Amy Klobuchar, is surging in late polls.
My staff told me in the 2 days since the debate from regular people online, we raised over $3 million.
And then there's Senator Elizabeth Warren, who's also attacked Buttigieg and Biden in the past and is now calling for unity.
Look, we're going to have to bring our party together in order to beat Donald Trump. And the way we do this is not by launching a bunch of attacks on each other and trying to tear each other down.
Okay, Ed, you've been on the campaign trail in New Hampshire. I remember sort of the state before, Iowa, you and others who were covering the campaigning there talked about how the voters were really taking their time to make a final decision. And for a lot of voters, it was like right down to the wire before they decided who they were going to back. I'm wondering what it's like in New Hampshire. Have voters there made a decision on who they're going to pick?
Not most of them, Anne-Marie. If you believe the CBS News Battleground Tracker polls, as you should, just 39% of New Hampshire's likely Democratic primary voters say they've definitely made up their mind. And one of the most telling statistics to me was that 37% of respondents said they'd consider a candidate who's not even on the ballot, New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who, of course, is skipping the first four contests. But here, like in Iowa, like across the country, Democrats still really trying to make up their minds over who exactly to support, with the exception, I think, of those who are supporters of Bernie Sanders. He has the most enthusiasm among his supporters, and if you're for him, you're for him. It's basically baked at this point. It's everybody else who's trying to decide, should we take that risk, or is he worth my vote, or should I be thinking about somebody like Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, or Elizabeth Warren?
So speaking of that CBS News Battleground Tracker, the poll also shows that support for the more moderate frontrunner is shifting away from Biden to Pete Buttigieg. So what are people saying? Is it that Buttigieg got this, pretty nice bump from Iowa, or is there something more going on here?
Yeah, things actually seesawed between Buttigieg and Biden when it comes to moderate voters. The former vice president was up, now he's down, the mayor is up. And up in a big way. And it is partly because of his Iowa showing. Yes, Buttigieg was starting to do well here in New Hampshire over the last few months as he visited the state, as they saw what was going on in Iowa, and people were taking an interest in him. As he kept saying in the closing days of the Iowa campaign, we need to show, not tell people that we can win. Well, he's done that now in Iowa, and it seems that because of that, voters here are quite interested. And he is likely to be helped tomorrow by the fact that in this state, if you are registered as an independent voter, you can show up to vote in either the Democratic or Republican primary. And since he's been making such a big appeal to independent voters, it's very likely they could help him tomorrow night, either place a close second to Bernie Sanders or maybe even pull it off and win.
So what about Senator Amy Klobuchar? I know she's not in the top 4, but she has been kind of gaining ground and kind of hitting the double digits. And when you look at our battleground tracker, she's just a couple percentages off from Warren. What's led to her rise in New Hampshire?
Right. Well, you know, not only is she doing decently in that poll, but there are some other surveys that are taken every night and released about 11 o'clock. A lot of us stay up late to see these numbers. Two competing tracking polls that sort of keep an eye on voters day to day, that quiz a few hundred people every night, show now that she has seen a really notable increase since Iowa, and now especially since Friday night's debate, where everyone seems to agree that she did quite well for herself. So there's a possibility we will see Klobuchar now either place third, if you believe certain surveys, or beat either Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden and somehow get into 4th place. That would be significant because, again, she only got 1 delegate now, it looks like, in Iowa, placing 5th, but it's just on this steady. She's doing exactly what anyone not named Sanders, Warren, Biden, or Buttigieg has been wanting to do all year. Peak at the exact right moment, and she's essentially doing that right now. The question will be, though, will she find any favor in Nevada? How would she do in South Carolina? Will she have enough money to survive into Super Tuesday, where her own state of Minnesota and many others are voting? Given that she's raised $3 million this weekend since the debate, it's totally possible. But again, she's going to have to quickly start making an argument for why she would be a better alternative than Sanders, Buttigieg, and the others.
That makes sense. So even though we have moved on to New Hampshire, Iowa's shadow continues to loom large here. And CBS News has confirmed that the Sanders campaign is actually going to be asking for a recanvass, or maybe a partial recanvass, just of some precincts. Tell us how that works, because, I mean, the difference between Sanders and Buttigieg, it's like a razor thin. So tell us how this recanvass thing would work.
Well, they have until 2 p.m. Eastern today to officially request that recanvassing. And essentially what it does, Anne-Marie, is compel Iowa Democrats to go back and do the math again and just make sure that everything was added up correctly. There are nearly 1,700 precincts in Iowa. Each of them matters in a caucus because you're drawing support out of all of them to figure out ultimately who gets what. The Sanders campaign believes there's a handful where the math may have been done in a weird way, or maybe the rules were broken. Because remember that when you made your first choice, if you were somebody who was supporting a candidate that didn't have 15%, you were allowed to change to a different candidate. But if you started after that first round with somebody who had 15%, you weren't allowed to change to somebody else. Very confusing to even us, more confusing to people who had to do it in person. There have been some accusations that those kinds of rules, some of which were changed this year, under requests by the Sanders campaign after what happened in 2016, may have been violated. And so they're just going to ask, for, at least in some cases, for the math to be redone and to basically dot the I's, cross the T's, and see whether there's any way Sanders either ties Buttigieg in the delegate race or somehow that lead flips to Sanders instead of Buttigieg. But at this point, the mayor looks like he's in the delegate race, which ultimately, no matter what a campaign tells you, is the only piece of math that matters. How many delegates do you have?
Right, so true. Ed O'Keefe, thank you very much.